Hello and welcome everybody. Today I want to discuss Warframe. So today we're going to discuss everything kind of around Melee 3.0 moving forward, around combat, let's say. So as we start at the beginning, I want to kind of focus around what that kind of entails. So you would ask, well, what does that mean? Well, let's move forward to when DE was really pushing for, say, 3.0. Okay, well, what's that? The 3.0 was a revision of the Melee system, as it were, as we found out. A lot of us thought it was going to be like, what was it, Melee 2.0 or 2.8, whatever the original Melee was before that, where we thought it was going to be like a damage overhaul. Nope, entirely different. Not much more, it was just entirely different. So, Melee 3.0 launched, and as it turned out, a lot of, not features, but there were some more features. There were some interesting things about it. But the big thing about it was designed to introduce a more fluid combat system so that you didn't have to take time to alternate between a dedicated melee mode and their guns. So a lot of people go, well, that's great. And on the surface, it looked good. And it looked very impressive if you watch the videos of it in action. It still looks really impressive if you go back and watch the videos of it today. In fact, it's still lots of influence of the original introduction of it in the game today. Although it's been altered and updated and modified a lot since then. But there's that fluidity is still in there today. Now a lot of people say, well, what was the downside? Well, the problem is a lot of keys were altered, a lot of inputs were either removed, altered, shifted, etc. To the point where if you were a dedicated melee fighter and you liked to do a dedicated melee mode, you were kind of SOL'd. You had to either learn a new system and get used to it, or rebind the keys, or simply, as a good number of people did, just not play the game. Or the fourth option is go on the forum and just rant and rave, which apparently a lot of people did. So, what ended up happening was, as time went on, there were some back and forth, and there was some things going about, and there was even some issues with console users allegedly that using a controller had issues here and there. But as time went on, I found this out not because of updates, but I found this out because I wanted to go in and try to play the game again, and go and input my own custom keys. And I was like, because people are saying, hey, you need to give it another shot. Just go in and try it again. Maybe this will be the time. I'm like, okay, fine. Because I walked away from the game. I uninstalled the game completely, scrubbed my system clean, got rid of all my resources for the game, unsubscribed from all content creators or making stuff for it. I completely removed the game from my life because I was just done. I didn't throw a lot of fit. I didn't anything. I just silently disappeared because usually when things change like this, it doesn't get reverted. This is how it is. And I was like, okay, fine. They're moving in this direction. Cool. I'll just move on with my life and I'll move on. But enough people have told me, as I've doing my show, that I should just give it one more good solid go. Like, okay, fine. So I go. And I found out that there was a recent update. There was the Old Blood update, or patch, or whatever. Like, okay, fine. I don't know what that means, but let's go in. Lo and behold, they re-added a dedicated melee mode, which a lot, not every single input, but a lot of the old inputs, they work, they function just fine. And so I was allowed to, out not allowed, I was able to go in and play with minimum problems. So my muscle memory and my learning curve were not hampered too much. And you may go, well, that's great, right? Yeah, I suppose. And I do feel like they did fix a glaring issue with the Melee 3.0 that even people that like 3.0 were complaining about, which was the quick melee mode. A lot of people like the quick melee mode for some weapons because the quick melee would be considerably shorter or easier to pull off instead of some of the more longer, more tedious moves. A good example of this is, say, any uh, pole arm, or not pole arm, like the bow. That that if you start off with a bow and you do the regular dedicated melee mode and you go whack somebody with that stance, it can be a little tedious. But if you use the quick melee, it's a little bit better. A lot of people like that, and I see it seems to be like they fixed that, so that's good. Yay for people that like that. Yee. Um, and I occasionally, known to use. I used to use Bookmail a lot, so that's nice that you could do that. So there are some things about the 3.0 that I did like. A lot of people like to slam. I personally, I don't have a thing for or against the slam personally. It is what it is. That's how it is. Um, they changed a lot of the mods, like Maiming Strike is no longer like 99% chance of crit, I believe it originally was. Now it's additive, which is fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. A lot of people praise that. That's cool. A lot of the mod changes they changed were designed not to make, because originally Melee was really, really, really strong. A lot of the changes they made were to make Melee not quite so stupidly high damaging, which is fine. And I guess I'm not the person to like say it's fine because I never used like 90% of the combos that were used. I'm not somebody that used the meta. I'm not a meta player. But I thought it was fine. I had these mods, I just never really used them. Okay. But it's whatever, it's fine. Whatever. It's cool. Melee's still really strong. It's fine. But so all that and all those changes, and they did update quite a bit of weapons that were not, let's say, not in the best shape. So that was cool, awesome. It was really nice. And they changed the stances to work with 3.0. That is a bit of a, how should I say? All the stances basically kind of got the same treatment in a more uniform way. So stances basically, you have a smack E or smack attack only, which doesn't allow a whole lot of forward momentum. Then you have a move forward and smack E that has more forward momentum. And then usually you have a block attack that has a lot of forward momentum, a travel attack, if you will. And pretty much all stances basically have this. And honestly, truthfully, I gotta say, there's some okay stances out there. They're fine, but that's about the best you're gonna get is they're fine. I honestly miss a lot of the stances that they were beforehand, but I also I've been saying for a while on stream that I kind of wish that D would allow us to kind of customize our stances in the sense of deactivate some of the moves in the stance or move the moves that we want to different inputs. You know, because some of the moves I don't like. Some of the moves I never wanted to activate. And, okay, fine. Some of them are kind of okay. But if you want to be pure and, honest about my opinion about it, I like the old stance better. Especially now that we have dedicated melee mode. It seems rather redundant to, redo everything. So, but that's just my opinion. So moving forward, we also now have liches. So this is going to be a little long and tedious. Liches are things you do and go through a long process to basically get upgraded versions of Grineer weapons that you could have got before. This is something that you'll basically be forced into after a certain point, after a certain quest that you do, regardless. I wish that you could just opt out of these if you wanted to, and do it when you're ready to do this, because I do like the idea of doing lich hunting, but I don't like the idea of doing lich hunting when you're not ready for it. It's when you're not ready for it, it's really annoying and it's really discouraging from playing because it is so annoying. But at the same time, if you are ready for it, it is fun and it is something you can do. So I'm at a loss here. Also know that as long as you have the Lich there and you go to an infected planet, you have the risk of getting things stolen, which I think is just I find it to be too much. Especially since you have to go through a long process of getting your Lich killed in order to free that up. So, yeah. Let's see what else. Oh yes, I forgot to mention. We have not dedicated. We have heavy attack. So heavy attack, pardon me, heavy attack is going to be one of those that I'm just going to outright shun because of what it is and because of it doesn't seem to really have a place in Warframe as it stands. I don't know, maybe it'll get better as time goes on. What I'm worried about is the game will be molded around heavy attack instead of heavy attack being molded around the game, which is what it should be. Heavy attack is generally, the way I understand it, is focused around you gaining combos from attacking or blocking, and then you use that attack, a heavy attack, to focus all those combos into one massive damage move. Here's the thing about that. Warframe is a game about hordes of enemies and killing hordes of enemies as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Having one massive damaging move that hits maybe one or two enemies is not effective. It's just not what this game is. And if you modify this game to be like that, as say maybe Whack-A-Mole, it's not going to be Warframe anymore. So there's really unless you make heavy attack go really fast, there's no way that this is going to be a good thing. So there's that. Now there are some builds folks run heavy attack that makes it go somewhat decent speed, but all you're really doing is just spamming heavy attack constantly, which foregoes a combo, but you're using weapons that already have a set combo in general. But as I stated before, that's a very niche thing to do with very few weapons, and it's not necessary because the amount of damage you pump out is absurd. That can do massive damage, but regular weapons and regular attacks kill everything just fine anyway at certain levels already. So it's not necessary. So you see where this doesn't really, heavy attacks don't really apply to this game, as it were. There's that. And then we get to the star of the show, and the thing I really want to discuss the most, which I think is something that nobody's really discussing, and when they do discuss it, it's more like they're trying to insult people that are worried about it. So, what am I talking about? Actually, I'm kind of talking about Life Strike. Now, I want to be clear. Most of the channeling mods and mods that were changed in a good way because most of those mods were never used for the most part. Most of those mods are in a better place now. This is one of the few off mods that after they changed it, it's almost worthless. Despite being worthless, it is the only real option for melee players to use to heal themselves. There are a couple alternative options. There are, but those options aren't necessarily better. And the thing that people need to understand is the only reason those options are compelling is because the change that was made to Life Strike currently. Now, a lot of you are saying, what am I talking about? Well, if you're living under a rock or you just don't know, I'm going to show you what Life Strike is now. This is what Life Strike is now. This is what Life Strike was then. So this only really applies towards heavy melee users. Not heavy melee users. People that use melee as their dedicated damage option. So people that main melee and don't really use a lot of guns, this is atrocious because the idea, I know they want to get rid of channeling for some reason because here, okay, so I want to clarify right now. The way the game is right now, they could have channeling in this game as just an extra button because they have dedicated melee mode, and they could have channeling in the game right now as the same button doing the same thing, and it wouldn't matter, and it wouldn't do anything bad. And I have a theory. The only reason they changed channeling is because they wanted to take all the channeling mods and put all the channeling mods into heavy attack mods. Which, as I said before, is pointless. So like I said, nobody should really be using heavy attack. So nobody should really be like okay with Life Strike being a heavy attack mod. And I'll just tell you right now, the only way to really do this is if you try to hit somebody with a heavy attack, usually if you blind them, stun them, or whatever, or you're invisible. And if it's anything like the ratio I run into, you'll probably miss 50% of the time, no matter how quick your windup is. Or you do the heavy slam, and you'll still miss at least 50% of the time. So, and never mind the fact that you still have to take the time to do all that setup and attack, which means you're still open to being hit on that end. Where with the previous way of doing it, you just hit them with a normal attack once you did channeling. So then you turn channeling on, you just hold it, then do attack, and you would heal based off of 20% of your maximum damage output. It was always a one or two attacks would just instantly heal you. And I want to clarify, it's not that it healed you, it's how it would heal you. It's not a region type heal, it's an instant heal. That's why it was good, and the fact that you could fight while in the middle of the horde is why it was a necessity for melee users. It wasn't an item, it wasn't an ability, it wasn't jumping in and out of your frame that required cooldowns, there wasn't any cooldown to this at all that slowed down the healing. It was whenever you needed it. That's why it was good. Now, there's a lot more death for melee users because they effectively nerfed it. Oh, and I point out that that all the heavy attack builds that I've seen people do, none of them use this mod. None of them. So the only thing I'm going to do, I'm going to give D some advice. You made this a heavy attack mod. Fine. Leave it a heavy attack mod. My advice, come up with something that was like the original Life Strike mod that heals on normal attacks. Okay? My personal advice is you can basically make it almost like the old Life Strike, which is basically have an activation button in dedicated melee mode on the left key. You don't have to call it channeling, just call it an activation button that you have to hold, and after you hold it, you have to smack attack. And there you go. You can just have that, or just have it function like the new Life Strike, where you just attack with normal attack, and they all heal for 20% life steal. Only you use normal attack instead, but you can call it something else, Life Strike 2, or Vampire Strike, or something. I'm never a fan of stealing something and repurposing it for something else, as opposed to putting something else in for that new thing, which is what they should have did. They shouldn't have repurposed Life Strike. They should have come up with a new mod to help heavy attack instead. But that's just me. Okay, well, I'm done ranting and I'm done complaining about Warframe, so I'll see you guys later. Peace!